Hey, what's up guys? This is Prabpreet and today I'm going to be talking about exactly what is bad photography. Now keep in mind this is super subjective. I like to think of it this way. I think there are certain rules when you take photographs or you take a video, for example. You need to make sure that these rules are in check. But as I said, this is completely subjective and it can be different according to your own styles. And if you're new to this field of photography where you're trying to figure out what's the goods and the bads of photography and what you shouldn't be doing for clients and what clients basically like versus things that they don't like, I highly recommend you subscribing to the channel or looking at my old videos and even watching this video, for example, and just learning from this and making your photography much more professional and up your game basically. So that's kind of why I'm here today. I just want to go over a couple of things that make you a bad photographer. Completely subjective, but still these are the things that clients look for in their photos, so do keep in mind when you take photos. So yeah, let's get right into it. So the first thing I want to talk about is lighting of your shot. There's a couple ways to light your shots. I'm not going to be talking about today how you can light your shots, how you can use a strobe or some sort of external lighting. Just going to be talking about the fact that how lit up is your picture. So there's a difference between underexposed, which is very dark, and overexposed, which is very bright. Both of the scenarios are bad because you can't find that middle ground, the perfect set. So you just need to make sure that whenever you're shooting in almost the perfect condition, and then when you go on to editing, for example, you can fix it, make it perfect. But you do need to make sure that you're shooting in RAW instead of JPEG, because JPEGs don't actually let you work around too much in the editing process. So just make sure that you're shooting in RAW and in proper exposure, so when you go on to the editing time, you can actually edit it and have a perfect exposure for your image. So no underexposed images, no overexposed images. Try to land the perfect exposure. So the second thing I want to talk about is the colors. While we're talking about colors, I'm also going to be talking about filters, because a lot of you guys see those filters on Instagram. For me, at least, that was a thing back in 2012 when I started using Instagram. They had all these filters. That's primarily the reason why so many people were attracted to this app, because you could add a filter onto your photo, post it in a matter of seconds. And I see a lot of professional photographers doing this as well, whether it's using VSCO or any editing software such as Lightroom or etc. They're basically stamping on these filters on their photos, but they're not actually doing much editing to them. So when you're editing your photos, a couple of things you need to make sure that your white balance should be on point. So when you're shooting something, for example, in the daytime, you want to make sure that your white balance is set to daylight or something warm that basically reflects everything around. So as you can see, during the daytime, you're probably going to have some sort of sunlight or whatever it is, and our eyes actually don't see this because they adjust to the environment, but your camera actually has a white balance meter that needs to be set to warmer tones. So your camera basically sees what your eyes see. So to match that same level, you have to make sure that your white balance is on check. And the same thing at nights, basically, when you're using a lot of the lights, which are inside lights or outdoor lights, your white balance should be very low compared to very high. It should be cooler now because everything is cooler. So just keep that in check. So just to keep in mind, when you go outside during the daytime and you want to fix your white balance, make sure it's warm, while when you're shooting at night, make sure that it's cold, like bluish. So that makes sense, to have everything match the way your eyes see it. But if you don't do this, you might sometimes see that your daytime photos are a lot more bluer than you would see in a normal perspective. And the same thing at night. Sometimes your white balance is too high, like a daylight. At night you might be getting different colors. So just to wrap it up, just make sure that your white balance is selectively similar to what your eyes are seeing at the time. So if you don't see something natural, it's obviously not going to look good in photos. So yeah, just push towards natural photos. And then once you are color grading or editing your photos, just don't go too crazy on the edit. Make it somewhat natural. If you're not making it natural, that's not your look, that's totally fine. And then also talking about the filters on top, just don't slap a filter on top, edit it. I say keep the opacity of that filter from like 20 to 30%, maybe 40, 50%, depending on what the filter is, what the mood is. You'll be able to tell like, okay, this is too much. Don't go too much. Keep it low, keep it consistent throughout your photos, throughout your timeline, and make sure your whole image gallery looks very normal. Just don't slap on too many filters. Make sure that whatever you're doing is kind of natural, or at least somewhat natural, so your photos come out nice. Another thing I want to talk about is skin tones. Once you're messing around with a lot of colors, etc., your skin tones in your portraits might just go crazy. You know, sometimes your color becomes too yellow or too pink, too green, etc. So watch out for that. Just have good colors in. So this was two things, okay? Color, and second one would be the brightness. And then the third one obviously would be focus. You want to make sure that your photos are always sharp. On my Sony camera, there's a couple ways that I focus onto my images. So the way I focus on a lot of my images would be just by touching at the object that I want to be focused, and I would basically touch it and I would shoot the photo. So do remember, when you're shooting in very low apertures, this is going to be harder. So if you're relying on the autofocus a lot, it might give you some problems. Also, if you're in one of the older cameras, such as this R2 or A7R, or even the A7 II back in the day, if you're using those cameras, it might just be better for you to use the manual focus. There's probably a switch on your lens if you're using a full frame expensive lens, or there's probably a switch on your body. So switch that into manual focus, you know, and then you can rotate that ring, basically get that perfect shot for yourself. Make sure your photos are in focus. You can also zoom in into your viewfinder or whatever, and you can see, okay, is this actually sharp enough? Because at some point your eyes can't really tell the difference between like a meter or a centimeter or something like that. So you just want to make sure that your subject is completely in focus. One tip I do want to give you is look for the eyes and keep the eyes in focus when you're taking portrait shots, because this basically gives a whole focused look. Sometimes if you go too low on aperture, for example, you go in like a 1.4 on an 85mm and you're taking a really close depth of field shot of someone's face, and it focuses on their nose instead of their eyes, that basically gives it a out of focus look. So first of all, you shouldn't be shooting like that. You should try to keep the whole face in focus. I've been there, I've done that. Don't do that. Don't be that guy or the girl. Just make sure when you're shooting, you have enough aperture to cover their whole face. So they're basically, the depth of field doesn't just cover like, you know, 1 centimeter or 1 inch. It should cover like their whole face or whatever you're trying to get it all in focus. Don't be that guy who just takes the nose in focus. Anyways, I'm talking about this because you should keep the eyes in focus, not the nose. If you do keep the nose in focus and not the eyes, you're basically gonna get this really weird way of the images where like it looks oddly out of focus, but no one can figure out why it doesn't look normal. So that is another thing that would be considered bad photography. Another way you can actually make your photography bad would be just over cluttering your image, just having too much in it when you're taking something, just so much happening on every single direction. You have the trees lit up here, you have someone else lit up here, and then you have your subject in the middle who's also lit up, and it basically kind of, you know, like I like to think of it like this. When you close your eyes and the first thing you look at, it should be the image, and it should be the subject in your image. It shouldn't be anything else in the image. And if your eyes are directly being pointed at something else but not your subject, that means that photograph is not good. At this point, if you're shooting in RAW, you can actually go in your Lightroom software or whatever. You can take care of some of those things, underexpose those overexposed parts of the image. Just make sure that they're covered, and just make sure that, you know, you have some sort of isolation of the subject from the background. So yeah, so this would be my tips on how to not become a bad photographer. Obviously, these are very subjective. You can have over cluttered pictures. Sometimes those make a perfect picture. You can have underexposed or overexposed images. Sometimes those make amazing pictures. You can have out of focus images. Sometimes those make, it's just that photography is art, and art is very subjective. I cannot put a label bad on top of photography or someone else's photography. So these are just my opinions and what I've seen over the years, what I produce for clients, and this is kind of the norm that they would want. They wouldn't want out of focus pictures. They wouldn't want under or overexposed images. They wouldn't want their skin tones to be bad. They wouldn't want the colors to be bad. So keeping it simple, keeping it normal is the norm. You should be following this for different clients. If you are making this for, you know, just yourself or an art piece, then definitely go out of the box, do whatever you want. But this is kind of like the rules sets you should be following when you are making something. So this will be it for today's video. I think it was quite a long one. I'll try to trim it down. Let's see how fast I can make it. But the goal is so you guys learn these skills and you don't have to make these mistakes on set or once you're delivering your images while editing. So this will be it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed it, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you guys liked it, please like it, share, and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.